When I was a kid, my life was like a bright, sunny day. My parents loved me very much. We lived in a small African local house with red clay walls and a roof made of dried grass. It wasn't fancy, but it was warm and full of love. My mother was kind. She had a smile that made me feel safe. Every morning, she sang songs while cooking porridge over the fire. Her voice was soft, like the wind in the trees. My father worked hard on our farms. His hands were rough, but when he carried me on his back, I felt like the happiest girl in the world. But one day, my mother got sick. At first, she just coughed a little. Then the cough grew louder, like thunder. She stopped singing. Her face became pale, and she spent days lying on our mats, sweating and shaking. I brought her water and held her hand, but she grew weaker. One night, my mother pulled me close. Her skin felt hot. "Amanda," she whispered, "be strong for your father." I didn't understand what she meant. The next morning, she was gone. My father cried. I had never seen him cry before. He held me tight and said, "We only have each other now." But he wasn't the same. His eyes looked empty, like the sky after rain. A year later, my father brought home a new woman, Mama Ugonwa, and her daughter, Ugonwa. Mama Ugonwa wore a bright blue dress and shiny earrings. Ugonwa had a pink ribbon in her hair and a doll tucked under her arm. I tried to smile, but Mama Ugonwa's eyes were cold like stones. Ugonwa got into my room. I slept on the floor near the kitchen as to give them warmth welcome to feel at home. In the morning, Mama Ugonwa said to me, "You're lucky we're here. Who else would have fed you?" But she never fed me much at all. At meals, Ugonwa ate first. I got whatever was left, often just a few bites of cold porridge. My father tried to make me happy. At night, when Mama Ugonwa wasn't looking, he'd sneak to me a piece of sugarcane or tell me stories about my mother when they met. "She's watching over you, little star," he'd say. But his smiles were rare now. Then, one terrible day, my father went to the market and never came back. A neighbor told us his truck had crashed into a river. I screamed and cried, but Mama Ugonwa just shook her head. "Now you're my problem," she said. She never looked like someone mourning her husband. Her concern was just me. Life became dark. Mama Ugonwa made me work all day. I fetched water from the well, swept the dirt floors, and washed clothes in the river. My hands blistered, but if I stopped, Mama Ugonwa would hit my arm. "Lazy girl," she'd shout. Ugonwa did nothing. She played with her doll or napped under the mango tree. Sometimes, she'd laugh when Mama Ugonwa yelled at me. "Amanda's a donkey," she'd sing. I hated her, but I never said a word. At night, I'd lie on my thin mat, staring at the stars through the cracks in the roof. I missed my mother's songs and my father's stories. I wondered why God let this happen to me. Was I bad? Did I make Mama and Papa die? One day, I found my mother's old scarf in a corner. It still smelled like her, a little like lemons and smoke. I hid it under my mat and cried myself to sleep. Mama Ugonwa's words rang in my ears, "You're cursed. Everyone who loves you dies." I started to believe her. Life with Mama Ugonwa and Ugonwa got harder as I grew older. Ugonwa always had new clothes, bright dresses, shiny shoes, ribbons for her hair. I wore her old things, faded dresses with holes, shoes that pinched my toes. When we walked to the market, people stared. Ugonwa looked like a princess. I looked like a shadow. One day, my shoes broke. The sole split open, and stones cut my feet. I showed Mama Ugonwa. She sighed and threw me a pair of Ugonwa's old sandals. They were too small, but I didn't complain. I stuffed rags in the toes to make them fit. Then my body began to change. Hair grew under my arms and my private area. My chest felt sore. One morning, I woke up and saw blood on my dress. I panicked. I thought I was dying. Mama Ugonwa saw the blood and slapped me. "Stupid girl, didn't anyone teach you?" She threw a pile of old rags at me. "Use this and clean yourself up." The rags itched and smelled. At night, I washed them in secret, scared someone would see me. Sometimes, blood soaked through my dress. The other girls at the river laughed at me. "Amanda smells like a goat," they whispered. I wanted to disappear. Another month, the bleeding was worse. The pain in my stomach made me cry. I begged Mama Ugonwa for money to buy pads from the market. She glared at me. You want money? For that, you're old enough to work. Go earn it. So I did. I asked neighbors for odd jobs. I washed dishes for Mrs. Ngozi, a widow with 6 children. Her house was loud and messy, but she paid me 50 naira a day. I carried buckets of water for Mr. Ahmed, the tailor. His shop was hot, but he let me rest in the shade. One afternoon, I saw a notice on a tree beside fence, help needed for elderly man. Cook and clean. Ask for Mr. Okeke. My hands shook as I knocked on his big iron gate. A tall, thin man with white hair opened it. Can you sweep floors? He asked. I nodded fast. Yes, sir. Mr. Okeke's house was quiet and clean. The floors were shiny, not dirt like ours. He showed me the kitchen, the sitting room, and his bedroom. No rushing, he said. Do it well. I swept every corner, scrubbed the pots until they gleamed. When I finished, he gave me 200 naira and a bowl of stew. Come back tomorrow, he said. Working for Mr. Okeke became my escape. At his house, no one yelled at me. No one called me cursed. He let me eat leftovers, real meat, not just bones. Sometimes, he told me stories about his youth. I was poor too, he said. But hard work is magic. At home, things got worse. Mama Ugonwa made me wash Ugonwa's underwear. Scrub harder, she'd snap. You think you're too good for this? Ugonwa sneered as I washed her clothes. She'd drop her snacks and pour water on the floor and say, clean that, you donkey. But I didn't cry anymore. I saved every naira I earned. I hid the money in a tin under my mat. At night, I counted it and dreamed of buying pads, shoes, maybe even a dress that fit. One day, Mr. Okeke saw my broken sandals. Amanda, he said gently, buy yourself new shoes. He gave me extra money. I ran to the market and bought blue sandals with sturdy soles. They didn't hurt my feet. For the first time in years, I smiled. But Mama Ugonwa found the shoes. Where did you steal these? She shouted. I told her I earned them. She slapped me. Liar, you're hiding money. She took the sandals and gave them to Ugonwa. That night, I lay on my mat, hugging my tin of money. One day, I whispered to myself, no one would take what's mine. Everything changed when I met Dr. James. He was the doctor who visited Mr. Okeke every week. The first time I saw him, he smiled at me, a warm, kind smile that made my heart jump. I was sweeping the balcony when he arrived. He wore a white coat and carried a black bag. Hello, he said. Are you Amanda? Mr. Okeke talks about you. I nodded, too shy to speak. He laughed softly. Don't worry, I'm Dr. James. Nice to meet you. After that, he always said hello. One day, he stayed late to check Mr. Okeke's medicine. I brought him tea. Thank you, Amanda, he said. You work so hard here. His voice was gentle. I felt my face turn red. Weeks passed. Dr. James started asking me questions. Do you like working here? What's your favorite food? One afternoon, he found me crying in the kitchen. My hands hurt from scrubbing pots. Without a word, he gave me a tube of cream. For your hands, he said. You deserve to be cared for too. Slowly, I began to trust him. We talked about small things, the weather, Mr. Okeke's stories, my dreams of having a garden. One day, he said, Amanda, would you like to walk with me? My heart raced. I said yes. We walked to the river. He held my hand. You're special, he said. I didn't know what to say. No one had called me special before, but Mama Ugonwa noticed. Who's this man you're sneaking off with? She snapped one night. I told her about Dr. James. Her eyes got widened. Bring him here. I need to meet him. I brought Dr. James home thinking that it was for me to introduce him to her. I never knew it was a plan to hurt my happiness. Ugonwa wore her best dress. Mama Ugonwa smiled too wide. Welcome, doctor. Sit, sit. She pushed Ugonwa next to him. My Ugonwa is such a good girl. So kind, so beautiful. Dr. James looked uncomfortable. Amanda is kind too, he said. Mama Ugonwa's smile faded. Later, when he left, she grabbed my arm. A doctor can't love you. You're nothing. The next week, Dr. James seemed distant. He didn't smile. Is something wrong? I asked. He shook his head. Just tired. Days later, Mama Ugonwa called Dr. James back. I was cleaning when he arrived. She took him aside. Doctor, I must tell you something, she whispered. Amanda is cursed. Her parents died because of her. Men who love her get sick. You see, Dr. James's face changed. That night, he didn't call. When I went to Mr. Okeke's house, Dr. James avoided me. 1 week later, he said, Amanda, this isn't working. My heart dropped. Why? I asked. He wouldn't look at me. It's not you. I just can't. I cried for days. Mr. Okeke found me in the garden. Child, what's wrong? I told him everything. He hugged me. Dr. James is a fool. You are worth more than lies. I saw Dr. James with Ugonwa soon after. They laughed together. Ugonwa waved at me, smirking. I turned away. Mr. Okeke was right. Dr. James didn't see my worth, but I wouldn't let Mama Ugonwa win. I wiped my tears and kept walking. After Dr. James left me, I felt like a broken plate. I tried to hide my tears, but Mr. Okeke saw me weeping and he said nothing. That evening, while I was cleaning his room, he patted the bed. Sit, Amanda, tell me what's wrong. I couldn't lie. I told him about Dr. James and Mama Ugonwa's lies. His face turned red with anger. That woman is poisonous, he said. But you, Amanda, you're gold. One day, everyone will see it. His words made me feel stronger. I wiped my eyes and kept walking. But deep down, I wondered if I'd ever be happy again. Months passed. Mr. Okeke grew weaker. His hands shook, and he struggled to walk. I cooked soft foods for him, read his favorite books aloud, and helped him to the bathroom. He'd smile and say, "You're my angel, Amanda." One afternoon, he clutched his chest and gasped, "Amanda, call help." I ran to the neighbor's house and begged them to drive us to the hospital. The doctors said his heart was failing. They kept him in a white room with beeping machines. I stayed by his bed all night, holding his hand. The next morning, a tall man in a suit stormed into the room. He had Mr. Okeke's eyes but a cold face. "Who are you?" he snapped at me. I am Amanda. I work for your father." He glared. "Work or steal?" Mr. Okeke woke up and growled, "Dennis, be kind to her. She's family." Dennis's face softened, but he didn't apologize. He stayed at the hospital, talking to doctors and making calls. I kept quiet, scrubbing floors and folding blankets to stay useful. One night, Dennis found me sleeping in a chair beside his father. "Go home," he said. "I'll stay." I shook my head. I promised to take care of him. Dennis stared at me like I was a puzzle. "Why? He pays you?" "No," I said. He's a father to me and my best friend." Dennis didn't reply, but the next day, he brought me a cup of tea. "Drink," he said. It was the first kind thing he did. Mr. Okeke got worse. One night, he whispered, "Amanda, fetch Dennis." When Dennis came, Mr. Okeke held our hands. "Take care of each other," he said. Then he closed his eyes and didn't wake up. I cried until my throat hurt. Dennis sat stiffly, but I saw tears on his cheeks too. At the funeral, Mama Ugonwa and Ugonwa came. Ugonwa wore a fancy black dress and fake tears. Mama Ugonwa hissed at me, "You think you're important now? Wait and see." Dennis handled everything, the burial, the guests, the family members all left. A week later, Dennis called me to the big house and told me the family lawyer is coming over and have requested that I should be invited. A man in a black suit read Mr. Okeke's will. "Half goes to my son, Dennis," the lawyer said. "The other half, to Amanda." The room buzzed. Dennis's eyes widened. "What? Why?" The lawyer handed me a letter. My hands shook as I read Mr. Okeke's words. "Amanda, you are like a daughter to me. Use this money to build your dreams. You gave me love when I felt alone. This is your chance to fly. Be brave." Dennis turned to me. "Did you trick him?" "No," I cried. "I never asked for anything." He studied my face, then sighed. "My father trusted you, so I'll try to trust you too." That night, I lay awake, clutching the letter. For the first time, I had money, a future, but I missed Mr. Okeke's laugh, his advice. Dennis started coming to the house more. He'd watch me cook or garden. One day, he said, "Teach me to make my father's favorite stew." I showed him, and he burned the onions. We laughed, a real, warm laugh. Slowly, the ice between us melted. But Mama Ugonwa wasn't done. She spread rumors in the village. "Amanda stole from that old man. She's a witch." I ignored her. Mr. Okeke's words echoed in my heart, "You're gold." One evening, Dennis found me crying in the garden. He asked me what's wrong. I murmured I miss Mr. Okeke. I miss him too, he said softly. We sat together, watching the sunset. Weeks later, Dennis asked, Amanda, what will you do with your money? I smiled. I want to open a daycare, a safe place for children, like I never had. Dennis nodded. I'll help you. We worked hard. We painted rooms bright colors and bought toys. When the daycare opened, children's laughter filled the air. It felt like healing. One rainy afternoon, Dennis held my hand. Amanda, I love you, he said. My heart raced. I love you too, I whispered. We married quietly under a mango tree. No fancy dress, just simple clothes and happy hearts. Dennis' friend Alex said, you two are perfect. Meanwhile, Ugonwa's life crumbled. Dr. James often came home angry. Why can't you cook? He yelled. Why is the house dirty? He must find fault anytime he comes home. Because Ugonwa never knew how to do anything as Momo's pet she was. Ugonwa cried to Mama Ugonwa, make him stop. But Mama Ugonwa just sighed. You should have learned to work. One day, Dr. James brought another woman home. Leave, Ugonwa, he said. I want someone useful. Ugonwa ran back to Mama Ugonwa, sobbing. What do I do now? Mama Ugonwa grew sick. She coughed day and night. Ugonwa tried to cook but burned the food. I'm hungry. Mama Ugonwa groaned. Ugonwa shouted, I don't know how to help you. She left Mama Ugonwa alone most days, chasing boys in the market. I heard about Mama Ugonwa's sickness from neighbors. My chest ached. Should I help her? I asked Dennis. He squeezed my hand. It's your choice, Amanda. I brought food and medicine to their hut. Mama Ugonwa's eyes filled with tears. I'm sorry, Amanda, she whispered. I was wrong about you. I nodded but said nothing. Some wounds take time to heal. Years flew by. My daycare grew. Dennis and I had 2 children, a boy named Kenneth and a girl named Annabelle. They called me Mom with so much love, it made my heart swell. One day, Ugonwa came to my door. Her clothes were dirty, her eyes sad. Can you give me a job? She asked. I let her clean the daycare floors. She walked slowly, her hands unused to labor, but I paid her fairly. Even kindness can teach lessons. At night, I sit with Dennis under the stars. Papa Okafor would be proud, Dennis said. I smile. The girl who was called accursed now has a family, a purpose, and love. The past hurts, but the future shines bright. Life now is like a warm, bright morning. Every day, I wake up to the sound of my children laughing. Kenneth, my son, loves chasing our chickens. Annabelle, my daughter, dances in the rain. Dennis calls them little storms, but his eyes shine with pride. Our home is small but happy. Dennis farms our land, growing yams and corn. I run the daycare nearby. The walls are painted yellow, like sunlight. 20 children come here every day. They call me Auntie Amanda. When they laugh, I remember Mr. Okeke. He would have loved this noise. One boy, Tob, came to me scared and quiet. His mother is late, and his father drinks too much. I held his hand. You're safe here, I whispered. Now, Ton draws pictures of lions and smiles. His father is trying to change because I step in. That's the magic of love, it grows. Mama Ugonwa's hut is falling apart. Her cough shakes her whole body. Last week, I brought her medicine. She grabbed my arm, her fingers thin as sticks. Amanda, forgive me, she croaked. I patted her hand. Rest, Mama Ugonwa. Forgiveness is hard, but hate is heavier to carry. I help her because I choose peace, not because I forgot. Ugonwa works at my daycare now. She sweeps floors and washes dishes. Her hands blister easily. She never worked before. One day, she cried, "Why are you kind to me?" I handed her a broom. Kindness isn't weakness, Ugonwa. Learn. Dennis and I sit outside most evenings. The sky turns pink, and our children play nearby. You've made something beautiful, Dennis says, squeezing my hand. Sometimes, I think of Dr. James. A neighbor told me he married a nurse. They fight often. I feel no anger, just pity. He chose lies over truth. Last rainy season, the village chief gave me an award for helping our children, he said. Mama Ugonwa watched from the crowd, her head low. Ugonwa hid in the back. After, Dennis kissed my cheek. Papa was right, you're gold. Mama Ugonwa died quietly one night. Ugonwa found her cold in bed. She came to my door, shaking. I don't know what to do. I helped her wash Mama Ugonwa's body and buy a coffin. At the burial, You gon' walk long to me. I'm alone now, she sobbed. You have choices, I said. Work hard. Be better. She nods but still struggles. Old habits die slowly. Today, the daycare is loud with songs. The children clap as I teach them a rhyme. Kenneth runs in, muddy from the farm. Mom, look, I found a frog. Dennis follows, laughing. He's a farmer, like me. I hug them both. This life isn't perfect, but it's mine. At night, I tell Annabelle and Kenneth stories. Once, a girl thought she was cursed, I say, but she fought and grew and found light. Did she win? Annabelle asks. I kiss her forehead. Yes, my star. And so can you. The end. Please like, share, comment and subscribe to be able to get our updates when we post a new video. Thank you for your support. We share a lot of love with you.